Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our world of darkness. It is Metaplot Monday, and typically on Metaplot Monday, we've gotten into the habit of going over all of the lore sheets, which I love. It's probably one of my favorite things to do, because it is a mechanic that allows us as players to actually dive into the meta plot, to become part of it, and to get entangled in it, whether that's good or bad. It's always good for the story. Also, excuse my voice. I have a little bit of a congestion issue today, but I don't think that'll stop us from going through on this little adventure. Now, as you saw in the opening, we have a community member by the name of Socio, I believe it's pronounced, who asked this question, which is, how do they all get along? What are the different relationships of? And I think I'm answering this right, unless I'm misunderstanding the question. So they're asking me about crossovers, and also how would the supernatural beings interact with other supernatural beings, like demons and things like that. And I think that the world of darkness is actually fairly well put together, because they made it so that everything has a way of bouncing off of everything else. Vampire is a wonderful example of that, where you have Gangrel are effectively the werewolves of Vampire the Masquerade. The Tremere are the mages of Vampire the Masquerade. The Hecata are the wraiths of Vampire the Masquerade, and so on and so forth. There is something for everything, but that does not exactly mean that they're going to get along. Now, if we're looking at werewolf, we'll go with werewolf. Let's start with werewolf. Werewolf is typically the kill first, ask later, or if you even do ask at all, group that's going to run into vampires. But I think that might be taken a little bit too seriously when it comes to interactions between vampires. Because yes, where you might have a group such as the Red Talons want to just rush in and kill everything and get it over with, the more humane city-dwelling werewolves, such as the Glasswalkers or the Bone Gnars, they might actually have something going on the way of a treaty. In fact, the idea that a group like the Bone Gnars could actually be sharing information with the Nosferatu, or that the Glasswalkers could be rubbing elbows with the Ventru, is something that I think is possible, but those relationships would have to be very, very tense, and probably not end well after a time. But the idea that werewolves are just going to kill on sight, where some tribes might, I don't think they really would. Because as much as werewolves see vampires as creatures of the worm, personally I see them as creatures of the weaver. They cultivate change, regardless of how stagnant they are. They want the humans to progress. And where a lot of the werewolves are going to have issues with that, some of them might not so much. And that is something I think that should really be taken into consideration when you're talking about games where they interact. So far, I've only had one werewolf interaction in my game, Thicker Than Water, but that was meant to be a boss battle type of thing. It was supposed to be a, here's this thing, it's gonna get out, it's going to fight, and it's weak, so it would have been able to be overcome with a little bit of cunning. That being said, when the Kindred ran into this werewolf, they were able to deal with it on a more social basis without actually coming to blows, which is something that could have happened. Believe me, it definitely could have happened. And I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in W5, in Werewolf 5th edition. Whether or not the relationships between werewolves and vampires are actually going to change as far as what they typically are in past settings. I know the Gangrel have a better chance of gaining a, maybe not a trust or a friendship, but at least an uneasy alliance when it comes to interactions with changing breeds, with werewolves specifically. And where it could go either way, because a werewolf could very well decide that this is something that we're going to try to keep alive for now to get information from, versus we hate this thing more than the others because it's trying to be like us. Also, from past iterations of werewolves are massively easily offended, I guess would be really the best way of putting it. But yeah, that's really how I say that's really how I see werewolves interacting with vampires. Now, vampires interacting with mage. Personally, I don't think mages for any reason would have any inclination towards hating vampires. I don't see vampires and mages getting into any kind of hustle at all, other than the mages of Clan Tremere. And if a mage walked up to a regular vampire and said something, I'm pretty sure they both could agree they don't like the Tremere. The Tremere they tend to be a necessary evil in most cases. As for the rest of the hierarchy of the World of Darkness, I don't see them really starting fights, because mages have their own initiative. They have a reason to be handling the things that they're handling. Moving on into Wraith. Wraith is interesting because that was something that I always saw as the vampires are the Wraiths to Wraiths. In my games, I've always made it so that you can't see a vampire through the veil like you can see a human if you're playing a Wraith, because Wraiths can see the ebb and flow of life. So if you see a human, possibly a fetter of yours, who's being fed on, it's just their life suddenly being drained. Now, I've always made it so that while they're feeding, or if they had just fed, the Wraiths can see red glowing eyes and the circulatory system as it's being pumped full of blood, just to give it that little bit more eeriness. And that's not in any of the games, but that is always something that I have done. I've always made it so that unless you're being directed by necromancy itself as a Wraith, you can't actually see a vampire. I just see vampires as being one of the major subjects of hatred towards Wraiths. I think they're terrified of them, because they could very well just drain the life force out of something that they care about. And that's just how I've always seen Wraith interacting with vampire. Changelings, oh my god. There are so many different things that I've heard about Changeling, and I don't know, I've just really never agreed with the idea that the banality that vampires produce will kill a fae in radius. I don't know if that was just a house rule in the game that I originally started playing in that had everything. That had changelings, werewolves, mages, just everything. Every game from the World of Darkness was being represented in our LARP that I first started playing in, which is why we had so many storytellers and we had so many players, because they were divided into different games. And I don't know, just the idea of vampire sounds too fun for changelings not to want to mess with. If I was running a changeling game, one of the first things that we would do is dress up like vampires, go to the Elysium, and mess with them. Just the idea of, we're gonna play vampire tonight as changelings. Like you're a fae pretending to be a vampire. That's just so much fun. Hey guys, what do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do? Let's play Vampire the Masquerade. I just see that being something that fae would do. And I do actually have a plot line in the works for my game with fae, but just covering from standard World of Darkness, what I've always heard is that the banality that vampires exude cause them to be lethal to fae just by being in their presence. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I see the idea that a vampire is a magical creature could cause more of an interest of attraction. I see kith such as the Solua wanting to interact with vampires because they're more like them. They're darker and they feed off the essence of humans. Because Fae are nothing but imagination vampires as it is. So maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I've always felt that Fae should be a little bit more interactive with vampire. Maybe not like, oh, they're always showing up, but I don't think that the mere presence of a vampire should kill a Fae. Or, yeah, I don't think the mere presence of a vampire should kill a Fae. I don't think that's a thing. Then we get into Hunter the Reckoning. I am very interested to see what World of Darkness is going to do with Hunter the Reckoning. I like the fact that it does seem to be more of a Hunter the Vigil kind of situation, and the idea that edges aren't supernatural powers that give them things, but it's more of you have an edge up because you have a friend in this department who could get you information or something like that. That is a lot more attractive to me. But the Hunter the Reckoning in previous editions, it was literally you're imbued by some unnatural power and have the ability to see and destroy everything. I didn't really get into much of it. I've heard stories that Hunter the Reckoning, the thing that actually gave them their power was Green Dragon, which is a totem of the BSDs, the Black Spiral Dancer Guru. I've heard that the thing that gave them their power was actually Lucifer. Like, I've heard so many different things, and I've never really felt the desire to get into Hunter the Reckoning that much because it just seemed too much, in my opinion. There was just, and I know that there's a lot of people out there who love the game, and I would love to get into a conversation with somebody, and maybe they can get me to enjoy it a little bit more than I have in the past. On my large bookshelf of World of Darkness books, of old White Wolf books and stuff, I have Hunter the Reckoning. But it was just something other than playing the video games that I used to play on GameCube all the time for Hunter the Reckoning. I just didn't really get into it. But the idea that these guys are just here to kill. They don't see good in anything other than themselves and humanity, and they're just there to save humanity. I don't see much of a crossover when it comes to that. I've played a game where it was primarily vampire and there was actually one person playing an imbued Hunter the Reckoning style hunter, and we had to bend some concepts to be able to make that work, and it really wasn't as fun as it could have been. But maybe if it was a no holds barred, us against them, two games clashing against each other kind of thing, that could be fun. But from what I understand about Hunter the Reckoning, there's just no interacting with anything other than other Hunter the Reckoning characters. Demon the Fallen. I love Demon the Fallen. I saw somebody on a page, it might have been my page, I really don't know. I try to pay attention to so many of them, who said that they ran a Demon the Fallen. Oh, I know what it is. I'm going to be playing a Sabbat online tabletop using 5th edition rules coming up very shortly, in a few days actually. My storyteller, he's the one who said that he had run Demon the Fallen, and he ran it like the television show Lucifer, which I gotta say, that sounds like a lot of fun. We always use Demon from Demon the Fallen to spice up our games. I think some storytellers might have taken it a little bit too far, where the plotline just didn't go anywhere other than Demon. But I think that the interaction between Demon and Vampire can be a lot of fun if you are looking at the idea of redemptionist demons, where demons believe that they're not supposed to have any direct contact with humans, and they're trying to heal themselves, so they're directing all of their actions towards vampires because they're not exactly human anymore. Now, are they? And I mean, you could always do the big bad demon. There's so many interesting types of demons, the defilers, the devils, that play a character in a vampire game with demon rules is just phenomenal. I myself played a demon for about a year in a vampire game nonetheless. And it, as much as I had not originally intended to play it, it did end up being a rather fulfilling character, and I did have a lot of fun with that. So Demon, it's really going to be them trying to gain as much interaction with Kindred so that they can get closer to the people to feed their faith. They're basically using the vampires to collect herd for them in that fashion, if that makes any sense. But that brings us to the idea of infernalism and actually doing pacts with demons and stuff like that to get some kind of edge over the competition. And I really do think that that is that. It is them trying to get an edge over. It's the idea of doing it for more power, and power is addictive. So at one point or another, you might not understand exactly why anybody would do it, but someone's going to do it. And with that, you just need to, the storyteller needs to be a little bit more inventive. There's always dark thaumaturgy, but I really think that dark thaumaturgy is just thaumaturgy from a dark source. I do like the idea that if you got something like Lure of Flames from a demonic pact, that the fire would be green or something like that to initiate balefire and the nether realms and stuff like that. But the idea of these demonic pacts, though, it's just, if you're wanting to play a character like that, your character has to have hit that point of either greed or desperation to cause them to do such things. If a vampire doesn't believe that there's any chance for them to exist after life, you know, if they're thinking they're going to die, they're going to go straight to hell, I mean, why not earn your place? So that could be a very good reason why they would do something like infernalism. Then we have Kindred of the East. Personally, I think you could probably get along with Kindred in the East as a tension game. The Kwaijin or the Wonkwe or whatever you're going to call them, they hate Kindred. That's it. They see them as defiled monsters that should be put down. And Kindred typically see the Kindred of the East as demons that need to be put down also. But I do think that there is always the we can profit together idea. So certain clans such as the Ventru could probably get along with a lot of the Kindred of the East. I could see Tremere trading occult secrets. When we're playing Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines on this channel, I directed my Toreador to being completely obsessed with the idea of Kindred of the East, as seeing them as the beautiful foreigners that deserve their adoration and stuff. I really kind of played off on the whole, I'm going to do everything that the Kindred of the East wanted. And I really wish there had been more interaction between the two. But I do think in the end, the Kwaijin are just going to try to kill the Kindred. And it's not going to be something that's going to be an everlasting friendship. So that brings us to Mummy the Resurrection. I have seen Mummy work in Vampire. Personally, I like the way that the book says it. I think that's very humorous, that they believe that the Sabbat exists, that they've seen the Anarchs exist, but they don't believe that the Camarilla exists. That the idea of a worldwide, multinational organization of vampires, a cult of vampires, hiding in plain sight and making sure that humans don't believe that Kindred exist is ridiculous. I love that. I love the idea that the Masquerade is working that well on mummies. But I can see mummies also having I want to know more about these things. I mean, obviously, the vampire reflection to Mummy is going to end up being the followers of Set, or the Ministry. And they hate each other. I mean, that's just that. The mummies and the mummies and the Ministry were just made to hate each other forever. But I can see other clans getting along with mummies in a fashion, if anything, just to study each other, because they're both immortals. They both kind of want to... There's got to be a level of curiosity. Now, again, there's also always the elder vampire who's just going to be filled with paranoia that thinks that they should be killed on sight, but can't really do anything about that. That's just who they are. But Mummy is fun. I think for the most part, that is it. The other things that I can see is werewolves. Werewolves are pretty much going to hate everybody, unfortunately. I can always see I can also see tension-filled alliances being part of most supernatural games, and where, I don't know, I think when it comes down to like werewolves themselves, they tend to just not like things to be too far one way or the other. The idea that Mummy and Fae and things like that, they'd probably end up seeing mummies as worm creatures too. Mage is too wild, Changeling is too wild. They're gonna be just grumpy butts about everything that they see, unfortunately. I really cannot wait to see what the World of Darkness does with these settings in this new world, because there do seem to be a lot of changes. And the idea of like an old Ventru sitting down in a board meeting across the table from a lupine, from a glasswalker, just seems like something that would be so interesting to interact with. And I don't know, there's just a lot of things that could very well change, and a lot of change that I do see coming in the future. So I am just incredibly excited to see all of that. I hope this answered your question, Socio. I really do. If not, please let me know, and maybe we can have more of an in-depth conversation on the subject. But regardless, for right now, this is what I think for the interactions between the different denizens of the World of Darkness. Thank you for joining me on this Metaplot Monday. I am Voivode Maquette. This is Our World of Darkness, and I will see you next time. Good evening.